It is not that Israel's policies are endorsed by all. Criticism for its actions have been quite forthcoming from some eminent Jews as well. Professors Jonathan Sachs, Britain's chief rabbi, in an interview published in The Guardian on August 27, 2002, sternly criticized Israel, arguing that the country was adopting a stance incompatible with the deepest ideals of Judaism and that the current conflict with the Palestinians was corrupting Israeli society. He says, "I regard the current situation as nothing less than tragic. It is forcing Israel into postures that are incompatible in the long run with our deepest ideals." He adds, "There are things that happen on a daily basis which make me feel very uncomfortable as a Jew." He notes that Israelis, who have lived centuries in dispersion, should very well understand the plight of Palestinians. You cannot ignore a command that is repeated 36 times in the Mosaic books. You were exiled in order to know what it feels like to be an exile. Israel Shehak, a Polish-born Jewish chemistry professor who spent 40 years in Israel and passed away in 2001, criticizes Israel's Zionist anti-human rights policies. In his book, Jewish History, Jewish Religion, and the Weight of 3,000 Years, he describes the extent to which Zionism constitutes a threat to humanity. In my view, Israel as a Jewish state constitutes a danger not only to itself and its inhabitants, but to all Jews and to all other peoples and states in the Middle East and beyond. In the book, Our Sacred Land, page 114, an Israeli lawyer, Leah Tzemel, says, "The Palestinians did not know what hate was. We taught them. We are good teachers." She became a Palestinian sympathizer because she says she is neither blind nor deaf to what is going on around me. "I volunteered for army service when I was 22 years old. I had the rock-solid belief that Israel wanted peace, but that we were forced into fighting the Arabs because they wanted to drive us into the sea. But when I saw the way in which these people, including elderly people, women and children, were forced out of their homes, terrorized and mistreated, with the obvious aim of making them flee to Jordan, I understood that Israel was not seeking peace. The Arabs had so little with which to protect themselves, and Israel clearly had the means of imposing peace, but did not want to do so, finding pretexts to annex the territories. I found the violence and humiliation that we inflicted on the Palestinians intolerable." This is mentioned in the book Our Sacred Land, page 225. Michael Warsaw, who has been a campaigner for Israeli-Palestinian peace since 1968 and is president of the Alternative Information Center in Jerusalem, says, "The perversity of the Israeli approach is that they have wiped out the whole history of what happened before the invasion and occupation with its succession of cruelties and humiliations. They use a volley of stones as a pretext, saying, 'We have been attacked. We need to defend ourselves,' while saying nothing about the fact that this attack is nothing but a response, and a very weak one at that, to a much greater aggression. What they are doing is so huge that if one analyzed what has happened from the beginning, one would not believe it. The imbalance of power and of actions is so great that one cannot understand why the world does not see the screaming injustice of it. The Palestinians are helpless at getting information across, while the Israelis are past masters in the art of propaganda and media manipulation." In the book Our Sacred Land, page 203, Israeli filmmaker Moshe Mizrahi says, "It's true that if I were a Palestinian, I would find it unjust if people came to my home, asked if they could rent a room, to which I agreed, asked if they could rent another, to which I also agreed, then rented the whole house and ended up taking over and driving me out." Yitzhak Frankenthal, chairman of the Families Forum, made the following speech at a rally in Jerusalem on the 27th of July 2002, outside the Prime Minister's residence. "My beloved son Arik was murdered by a Palestinian. It is unethical to kill innocent Israeli or Palestinian women and children. It is also unethical to control another nation and lead it to lose its humanity. It is patently unethical to drop a bomb that kills innocent Palestinians. A nation that cannot draw a line is doomed eventually to apply unethical measures against its own people. The worst in my mind is not what has already happened, but what I am sure one day will. And it will, because ethics are now being twisted, and the political and military leadership does not even have the most basic integrity to say, "We are sorry." We lost sight of our ethics long before the suicidal bombings. The breaking point was when we started to control another nation. My son Arik was born into a democracy with a chance for a decent, settled life. Arik's killer was born into an appalling occupation, into an ethical chaos. Had my son been born in his stead, he may have ended up doing the same. Had I myself been into the political and ethical chaos that is the Palestinians' daily reality, I would certainly have tried to kill and hurt the occupier. Had I not, I would have betrayed my essence as a free man. Let all the self-righteous who speak of ruthless Palestinian murderers take a look in the mirror and ask themselves what they would have done had they been living under occupation. I can say for myself that I, Yitzhak Frankenthal, would have killed as many on the side as I possibly could. It is this depraved hypocrisy that pushes the Palestinians to fight us relentlessly. Our double standard that allows us to boast the highest military ethics, while the same military slays innocent children. This lack of ethics is bound to corrupt us. My son Arik was murdered when he was a soldier by Palestinian fighters who believed in the ethical basis of their struggle against the occupation. My son Arik was not murdered because he was Jewish, but because he was part of one nation that occupies the territory of another. As much as I would like to do so, I cannot say that the Palestinians are to blame for my son's death. That would be the easy way out. But it is we Israelis who are to blame because of the occupation. Anyone who refuses to heed this awful truth will eventually lead to our destruction. In the book Our Sacred Land, page 235 to 237, is written that the Palestinians cannot drive us away. They have long acknowledged our existence. They have been ready to make peace with us. It is we who are unwilling to make peace with them. It is we who insist on maintaining our control over them. It is we who escalate the situation in the region and feed the cycle of bloodshed. I regret to say it, but the blame is entirely ours. I do not mean to absolve the Palestinian, and by no means to justify attack on Israeli civilians. No attack against civilians can be condoned. But as an occupation force, it is we who trample over human dignity, it is we who crush the liberty of Palestinians, and it is we who push an entire nation to crazy acts of despair. The Middle East peace process may well be the most spectacular deception in modern diplomatic history, writes Henry Siegman, the former head of American Jewish Congress. Since the failed Camp David summit of 2000, and actually well before it, Israel's interest in the peace process, other than the purpose of obtaining Palestinian and international acceptance of the status quo, has been a fiction that has served primarily to cover for its systematic confiscation of Palestinian land. This is mentioned in the book Palestine Inside Out, page 92. Tim Wallace Murphy, author of the book What Islam Did for Us, wrote in page 211 to 212 that in Britain, a leading Jewish MP, Gerald Kaufman, wrote an open letter to Prime Minister Ariel Sharon in which he reminded the Israeli leader that the symbol of the Star of David was not the property of the State of Israel. It was the symbol of worldwide Jewry, one that Sharon had no right to besmirch with the blood of innocent Palestinian civilians.